Hey everybody, hello, and welcome to Some Guys Talking. I am your host, Brian Holler, along with my wonderful co-host, Aaron Washington. Aaron, how the hell are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic, Brian. How are you doing today? I'm very excited to have Shaun on today.
I know, we're excited to be talking with Shaun Salvaje, one of our favorite people out there. We're going to be getting to know Shaun and talk a little bit about her journey and, what she's doing and how she got there and all the good things. Thank you for joining us, Shaun, here on the Beard Bros Media Network on Some Guys Talking. How are you today?
I'm so good. I'm so happy to be here. I just, you caught me. I packed a bowl and to just sesh with you guys.
Right. Indeed, and we thank you for doing so. And yes, here on Some Guys Talking, we highly encourage the use of plant medicine while we speak, and certainly we are able to speak freely as well. So don't worry about saying anything that might be otherwise censored.
I'm always mindful. Actually, was at the ledge last week, and they were like, "How many milligrams are folks taking?" I said, "Well, sir, I've taken about 30 milligrams since we've been sitting here. So, thank you for the invitation to dose. I'm always very comfortable being highly medicated at all."
Yeah, I know. Like, I always have to remind. I'm like, well, there's levels to this, so you might not want to ask me exactly what I'm doing. You might want to just start with like 5 or 10.
I probably could have deployed. I probably could have stayed in the military twice as long if they would have let me have a little pipe on the desk.
Well, I mean, ultimately, military, that's an interesting frontier. And I guess as we dig on in, ultimately, you got like sports organizations are fine with it now, all the major ones. I mean, it would be a big deal for the military to sort of, kind of take a stance and adopt.
Oh my God.
In this way. Wouldn't that be something else? I mean, obviously, there's people trying to make sure that this happens.
I mean, I would have been the
all of us are, but anyhow.
Sergeant, like, back in the old days when you walk into sergeant's office and it's like big smoky room, except back then it was like cigars. Like, what's that? Dr. Strangelove. Instead of that would have never happened if they were smoking weed.
No. All right, so let's start from the beginning though. So Shaun Salvaje is with us. Hello, Shaun. Shaun, for those who may not be aware of you, what do you do? What do you currently, what is your, job, if you will?
So I work in the cannabis and psychedelics industry. For a number of years, I was a communication strategist, and I did a lot of marketing, communication behind the scenes. And that kind of bled into me working in the business strategy, operations management. I've managed a ketamine clinic here in Austin. Worked with Grasslands for a bit, did some work with independent cannabis contracts, and I saw how the industry was being built across the nation, even though I had moved from New York to Texas. And that was with intention, because part of what I do now is I have a pro bono lobbying firm, the Puebla Group. And I've taken all the work in communication, marketing, business operations, strategy, and I've actually opened a new offering I'm really excited about, but I became mediator arbitrator more recently. And so Parley is coming out. Parley is your opportunity to meet with anybody who you might have an issue, conflict, or you need to just finalize an agreement with, and you don't want to hire a bunch of lawyers or go before a judge and let them make decisions for you. So I'm really excited to be working in mediation arbitration, especially as the industry evolves and we see more M&As and we see more people opening businesses and also more people closing businesses. I'm really looking forward to helping the industry elevate, because having these nuances and contracts means that the industry is getting to a point where, we need our own mediators. We need our own expert arbitrators, maybe folks to go meet with legislators and help us broker conversations and deals when it comes to creating good legislation. So, and that's what I do here in Texas. So I know it's hard to keep that one short to like 1 or 2 sentences.
No, it's good.
Yeah. Isn't that the way it is for anybody in cannabis, though? You start in one space where you have an expertise and you find yourself like, wow, this is what the industry needs, though. And you migrate towards it.
Yeah.
How did you become interested in arbitration and mediation?
I had my own run-ins with the law. And I think that's usually the good story behind any good attorney or anyone who works in that space, even in on the legislative process or on the government side, as you see where there's something inefficient or something missing. You can see where the application of the law is often misapplied, especially in cannabis. We have people who go to jail all the time for nothing and it's not. I know a lot of people out there in America think it's innocent until proven guilty, but actually the way that our legal system is designed, you need to prove your innocence or bail out or work a
You
deal.
don't have to tell me. I know what that's all about. Yeah.
So after seeing enough of it and also helping towards the end of my time in operations management, what was happening is companies were bringing me in to help facilitate their divorces. I don't know how, but I had developed a reputation, and it's probably from the military experience. I had about 12 years in the Air Force, and I did get pretty far pretty fast. I was good at it. So what was happening is people were reaching out to me on the cannabis and the psychedelic side to help them facilitate conversations when things weren't going well. And at the time I was doing operations management, so I would actually be helping to facilitate conversations and also manage the team. And what I learned is that really just brings you into the middle of the mess. And it's really hard to win from there. So mediation and arbitration gives me an opportunity to bring two parties to a table. You can do it in one day. You can do it in a couple of days. You can do it with multi-million-dollar contracts. You can do it with very small contracts. But to small business owners, 40,000 might not be much. But to them, it could be everything. It could be everything that they've worked for, their life savings. So it's an opportunity to kind of level the field between parties, actually have a conversation. I don't know if you guys have seen that episode of The Office, Win, Win, Win.
I've seen them all.
Yes.
Many times.
I was like, shoot, I can help folks facilitate deals, broker conversations, make decisions for themselves. Because if you go to court, the state will decide for you, and the state has rules and regulations and defaults. And more often than not, no one likes the default. So mediation, arbitration in the field, especially with cannabis and psychedelics, with people, sometimes we have a really good idea and we come together with our friend and we're like, wow, you have a good idea. I have a great idea. And we're friends. Let's do this. And then it totally blows up in your face. Maybe you're good as friends and not great as business partners. This is a way to maybe try to serve. Yeah.
I mean, I think if you're really friends and you have a proper idea that that you could execute on, you really for it, I don't think there should be any issue with, making
and if there isn't any issue, sorry about the feedback. If there isn't any, I got excited. If there isn't any issue, then what you can do is it's like prenups. You can also mediate those. You don't have to go to a lawyer. And you also find that people, when they go to a lawyer, the lawyer tells them, I can't do this for both of you. I have to represent one of you. And that usually causes some weird kind of conversation. You can get those agreements mediated. So your M&A agreements, where you're going to be acquired or you're going to build a business with your friend and you guys love each other, get a contract, wear a condom is what I like to say.
And move forward with caution. But, you can work a lot of things into a contract too that are
and it doesn't have to be
beneficial.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be scary. And so why would you do this with a mediator instead of just doing it on your own? One thing I found is that when you have a mediated agreement, it's not irrevocable. It's enforceable. And when you have those private agreements, you got to prove their enforceability first. So it's just a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one thing that's really advantageous to your point is literally that, ultimately, it's important, it's your job as a mediator and arbitrator to be as unbiased as possible and to offer advice that would be beneficial to essentially the agreement and both parties as opposed to one or the other, right? And so even in our best times, it might be good to have somebody who's tasked with doing that isn't as familiar with each other, because they're just going to give their honest opinion, and you're incentivized as a mediator arbitrator. Literally, you are paid to be as unbiased as possible and to create the most beneficial environment for both parties, which is why that's advantageous for you to do. As much as I love Aaron, if we were going to put together business plans, we might need Shaun because Aaron and I do love each other so much. Like we know each other so well, right? That is a reason why you would maybe want a third party to basically just go, yep, that's a good idea. Actually, that one's a little more advantageous for this person. Are you good with that? You know? Oh yeah, because we're going to do it over here and that'll be advantageous for you. So we're good. Yes. Okay, cool. Yeah. Right. And you're basically offering advice that is not about the relationship we have. It's about the deal we're making.
Exactly. It's about the deal, and it's about maybe you have a good relationship, but there are some areas where you either haven't thought through the details,
that's right,
or you have and you disagree. You still love each other and everything else is great, but there's one sticking point that you can't quite figure out. When you go to someone who's a mediator, so if you go to mediation, you hire a third party, it doesn't matter. Like it could be $1 million contract or a very small contract. The rate is the same. So like your mediators are going to change their rate based on whatever outcome they think they can help you achieve. That's how we maintain neutrality. And then of course your mediator has their rate. So you're going to have some mediators who are, you can get like regular defense lawyers, or I don't know if because cannabis is so special, I would get someone who specializes, because you're going to get a mediator who may not, like when you do health insurance claims, you usually get a mediator who specializes in health insurance because they understand the nuance of policy and procedure. You want the same for cannabis. When you do that, you can come together, you can meet, you can have a conversation. If you have some things that aren't all together and you don't want it in front of a judge or two lawyers, great. It's confidential. So you can both share your input. You can share your input together. You can be in the same room. And the way that I do it, or one thing that I'm bringing into it, because I was in communication strategy for so long, is communication coaching. So one thing I used to do is help executives learn how to communicate and express themselves confidently, but without overpowering their teams and while inviting feedback. So that's something that I'm bringing into this, because I think it's so important, especially as like we're seeing things unfold everywhere, like globally. Conflict. Wow, it's so popular and never seems to go away.
I was to be able to negotiate through conflict.
Exactly, and helping people make deals. That's got to be up there, right, with the most ancient professions, I guess. Like I was like, hey, shit, there will never be a missed opportunity to help people make a good deal.
And on that note, I think ultimately, so Shaun, currently mediation, arbitration, consulting, lobbying, and then content creators / journalism, advocacy. Yes?
Yes. Yeah, so
those are our 3 buckets, basically, correct?
Yeah. The journalism is because I still love it. I still love storytelling. I still love the craft. And sorry, before, honestly, we're seeing this new era in media. Let me catch myself.
That's right. Get your water.
We're seeing this new era in media, but before that, we didn't have, I felt almost guilty because I had this skill set that the government helped me develop, because I was a journalist. I was a combat photographer. That was I joined the Air Force in 2007. They trained me to be a news broadcaster, to do their news. And then they also have combat camera, and you deploy overseas, you document everything that happens. At the time, we wanted to be very transparent about operations on the ground. And this all comes from, it originates in the Vietnam War, because of the American people for the first time actually saw what war really looked like. And I think that is so important. That's why I became a combat photographer. I ran out of money too. So I tried to go to college to do it, and I ran out of money and was like, how do I get to Afghanistan for free? And it was after September 11th. So that was something that did factor into my decision making. And the Air Force was like, we'll let you be a news broadcaster. So bringing all of that forward into the industry to have conversations where you're like, I've seen conflict at a really bad level, and then I've seen it, how we do it in the industry. And we had an opportunity to start telling our story, but we didn't necessarily have the medium. So I started broadcasting and doing content for cannabis strictly because I'm in Texas, I'm a cannabis consumer, I'm a mom. So normalizing, and it was so critical, like going back 5-6 years. But then also it was before folks like you guys existed, like before Beard Bros really started driving the train in news, and before Green State really started to blow up, which thank God. So the journalism stuff, I still do it, but it is all pro bono. It's not paid for. I would love to get, I want to be the PBS of cannabis media, I guess, and brought to you by people like, yeah, it helps to keep it neutral.
I'm not sure we want to be the PBS of
you
of
don't,
media.
and that's okay.
But full
That's
disclosure, Shaun has a show on this here Beard Bros Media Network as well. It is called Highly Informed. It is very, very wonderful, and we're very thankful to have Shaun as one of our contributors. And ultimately her show comes out first Tuesday, or new season. New episodes come out every first Tuesday of every month. So her next episode of Highly Informed on the Beard Bros Network will be May, whatever that is. I should probably be prepared for that, huh? But anyways, it's gonna be the first Tuesday in May, and so
there's no date. We're in the time warp before 420, so I think
it's the 6th.
We don't. It's the 6th after Cinco de Mayo. That's perfect.
May 6th, yes, day after Cinco de Mayo. Celebrate by watching the next episode of Highly Informed with Shaun Salvaje on the Beard Bros Media Network. Bang. And so ultimately, all right. So Shaun gave us some nuggets in her last response, though, right? When she's talking about content, she's like, "Oh, she got trained by the military how to be a photojournalist." And I also heard earlier Shaun say that she moved from New York to Texas. So where were you born, Shaun? Where did you grow up?
This is the funniest one. I'm from Texas. I grew up split between Texas and Minnesota. I'm Mexican American and Jewish melting pot, like part Scandinavian Viking. And where was I born? In Germany. I was born. I know, right? It's all random. My sons were born, out in Japan, but that's because in the 80s we had bases out there. So I was actually right on where the Berlin Wall was, right before it came down, and I was out there. My parents were on a tour, and I was born in Germany. When all this birthright citizenship stuff, not to take us too far off topic, but like it took me forever to get my driver's license because I have birth abroad paperwork. And back in the early 2000s, they were like, "What is all this?"
Right, I didn't even know.
Right. And then I had my German certificate, which is all in German. And they were like, because it was shortly after 2001, they were like, you could be a terrorist for all we know. I was like, dude, I'm a fucking suburban kid in Minnesota, man.
Right.
Can I please get my license so I can like drive to high school?
Just want to go on.
I just want to get to the mall. I don't want to hurt anyone. I want to go to the mall.
It's like I'm the other brown skin. I'm Mexican. Like it was just insane. But I get now, like this whole paperwork thing is kind of crazy. So I was in the military, but I am an American citizen. But I was born in Germany, and I'm from 2 different places. And I don't think this is unique. Like I know that my formula is, but I think we're gonna find in the future more people are from everywhere. And it helps. It helps you broaden your perspective so much.
Well, I mean, I'm from the West. Most people I know are sort of a mush, if you will, of things. You go to the Northeast, South, it's a little different. But if you go to the West, we're generally speaking a big hodgepodge of a lot of stuff.
And
I'm definitely a mutt of epic proportions. Mixed with a whole bunch of stuff from indigenous to a lot of European stuff. I'm all over the place. So,
Plus, you grew up between Texas and Minnesota. That's 2 crazy accents. So it was
that's kind of weird.
Different worlds so immediately. It's probably what drew me to photojournalism, and because you can see where the divides are between 2 different worlds, and it makes you realize, or maybe this is like my ADD or whatever.
Sure.
You start to see the patterns in the breakdowns in communication. Like for me, now looking back from combat journalism into cannabis into mediation, this all makes sense because it's all about conflict, story, communication, getting the truth across and then coming to some resolution. Because it wasn't I wanted to be a combat photographer because I was like guts and glory. It was because I had seen James Noctway's work, and my mom was in the military and she was deployed to Iraq at the time. And you had Geraldo drawing out maps, you know, on Fox News. And that was like, what the fuck? What the hell?
Yeah, we
and
need some real, you know.
Yeah, I think one common thread for me has been, if this idiot can do it, for fuck's sake, I guess there's an opportunity for me to get there too. So,
well, now you're hitting on a common theme that we uncover on this show quite often as people, you know, I got to tell you, Shaun, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this realization or this theme has come up in every single episode we've ever done. And I think it's a very key learning element that people get if they're heading, you know, in the right direction in their careers, which is, you know, funnily, I'll say it as like, never meet your heroes, right? But ultimately, it's also what you realize is 100% is there are people with more money and influence than you that do not deserve it. And you are better than them. And you are more talented. And you are more skilled. And once you realize that in whatever field, lane you see, like, I mean, just go meet a handful of multimillionaires. You'll be super flippin' impressed by a couple. And you'll be like, holy shit, I totally get it. But then like a bunch of them are going to be like, what the fuck?
You're like this guy.
People, and a lot of them didn't have to work hard to get where they were. And then, so they're very unimpressive if you've had to bust your fucking ass your whole life just to earn maybe even six figures or whatever. So and that's the experience of
and
most
they're often surrounded by yes men. So because sometimes you're like, wait,
so enabled as well. So you're right.
How did I believe the illusion? And then you get to know, and you're like, ah, shit.
Yeah, there is no secret. Yeah,
they're all saying yes.
Go ahead. No, finish your point.
Well, think about it, because this happens in the industry. Let's bring it home.
Oh, for sure, it does.
It happens in the industry. This is what I like about the whole mediation thing, because you get to just address the bullshit right head on. You know, there's people with influence, and then there's people with affluence, and sometimes you don't have to do shit to have either. And if you're surrounded by people who say yes, and then in the industry go out and say yes on your behalf, like, because it's just the hype of it, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe they're invested and they're like, oh my God, I don't want to say no. Obviously, I don't want to like be that guy who's like out there talking shit. But we do often find ourselves in groups of yes men with a person who maybe isn't everything that they purport to be, or they don't have all their shit together and they just can't acknowledge it. And you you kind of gaslight yourself into going with the flow. And I think right now, especially with all the change and transition, if I was going to give anybody any kind of motherly advice out there, or whatever New York is channeling right now, but it's like, keep track of like what's happening around you. And if your gut is saying like someone isn't really stacking up, stick with that.
You might want to look into
watching, but don't watch actively on the inside. Watch it from the sideline for a bit first, you know? I don't know who needs to hear that, but somebody did.
Well, what's funny, the way that our conversations that started this whole show were in fact that it was kind of knowing yourself, realizing what is smoke and mirrors and what is the truth. And almost like where we started was literally, and it's crazy to see how things have progressed, because our first shows were literally warning against everything that's going on, right? Everything. We were talking, we kind of started on this kind of anti-red pill thing, because it's like these guys who make millions of dollars and they're giving just shitty advice. They're giving the worst advice ever to these young men, and they're lost. And it was kind of, that's where we were, you know, when it's kind of know yourself and become better. But
that is so needed. Just, you know, I'm raising two boys, and there's only so much I can do to show them what it is to be a good man and to teach them what it is to be a good man. But it means one thing coming out of my mouth and a completely other seeing the example live through other men. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's right. Can I just speak to that? Because it's interesting. You know, I have two daughters. They're about to be 19 and 21. So I was always a girl dad. I was like happy not to, and funny, I was happy not to have sons. I'm like, I'm good. Then I have a nephew who's in my, now I'm like, oh, that's my boy. But I say all that to say, with them growing up, I dealt with just them having obnoxious boys and whatever, like just, oh my gosh, the stories of my daughters coming home and boys yelling Trump in their face, just nonsense. So I was always like, I would focus on girls, but it wasn't until I got older and started to see where all these young men were being led astray by these morons, is that, wow, no, there is a generation, there are a lot of men that are lost. And I used to be like, nah, I'm all about speaking to girls at women's issues but it's like, no. A lot of, well, just about all of the problems that we're having right now are because there are insecure, like thin-skinned little boys who are afraid and they're acting tough. Like this is literally what we started this whole show about, was trying to break through that. So yeah, it's a shame that you have these guys who have $50 million in their like sniffing chairs and telling all these young men to do dumb stuff and women are your property. It's just insane. So that it was trying to be that little like pebble in the ocean of just negativity and bullshit, because that's what, you know. Yeah,
it's interesting because it always gets me. Like, I wasn't expecting us to go here, but it's fascinating to me as because I'm a military veteran. I went to Afghanistan. It just happened to be the thing that I wanted to do. I didn't think about it, whether I was a female or a male. And then you have a lot of people who posture under that guise of like masculinity, that super alpha thing.
Sure.
Even using like Stoic philosophy, which I actually love. I love Stoic philosophy. But they've never like actually seen combat or deployed or done shit. Actually, they're mostly, sitting on their couch. And I think one of the things that we have to address is, I don't know if cannabis helps with this at all, but I think it could be helpful. We need to like look at part of it. And I don't want to get too scientific. I'm no Huberman. But the dopamine regulation and how I think people need to, like, I've gone through my years in cannabis where I got my ass kicked, some more recent than others. and I feel like there's something to be said about getting your ass kicked by the universe so that you can learn and get better. And you got to not be afraid of that. But not being afraid of that, like the real dominant masculine thing, like as far as discussing like folks like Andrew Tate or something of that nature, because I think that's who we're alluding to, or folk, the content creators.
The concept of incel, or
I don't like that.
There's a lot of things. There's a lot of boxes you can check about. But how masculinity is all warped or fucked up. Yeah.
Well, it brings me back. Why did I first relate it to military experience? Because like servant leadership, isn't that supposed to be like the ultimate form of masculinity? Is that you're such a great leader that you're there to serve, actually? And then that whole thing about possession and is really about surrender, but surrender done by a follower. And this is whether you're a man or a woman, which is why I feel kind of comfortable having this conversation, because otherwise these aren't usually this is not the content I normally create. I just like to talk about the legislature and what they're doing.
That's right.
But I think if you look at leadership and followership instead of masculine and feminine, and then what are we really serving here? I think we can come to some better understandings on both sides, like what it is to surrender and be a good follower and supportive on the team, and then what it is to be a leader. And no, it's not about dominance. It's about you're the shepherd. Like I always go back to so we call the ranch out here, we call it the good shepherd. That's the point, is we're supposed to be tending this garden. We're supposed to be good shepherds. But
I just say to that?
Go for it.
That's the most and I've tried to say, because people like, what's alpha? No, the most alpha thing that you can do is protect those who can't protect themselves. You punch the bull, you punch up, you don't punch down. And that's the problem. Like, I need to find a way to be able to speak to that more, because to just tell young men, and I know we're going to get back on point, but just to tell young men that no, like it's not like you're not tough saying like, oh, like punching down. Like a real tough guy punches the bully in the nose and protects everybody else.
Well,
like it's not to pile on this, these people. They're like, it's just insane. So just to watch where we've talked about this, like things going, and to see it progress has just been absolutely crazy. But I just had to that point of just the shepherd and protection.
I think we're at such a point of dissonance that I understand like people are afraid right now to an extent. Some people are feeling really empowered and some people are feeling afraid. And I think one thing that we can say is that with the more dissonance there is, that at some point the big conversation will happen. And as far as like the world of this conversation, the manosphere and women and connections and relationship, and why are men falling behind, or are they falling behind? Women don't need the same. Like, it's so fucking complicated. But in all those layers, I think at the end of it, you have an opportunity at the climax to have a conversation. And then hopefully, like, I'm hoping all of this kick up. I was listening to something earlier talking about Nixon in the 60s and how Nixon was just like, fuck it, we're undoing all of that. We're going all the way back to the 50s. And the person also associated it with like, really though, policy wise, he was trying to go back to like 1853. And I feel like we're there right now, and we need to
stay now. And we're going back. That's where we are now. We're in the 60s.
We're in the 1800s. We need to like stay together on this and keep communicating, because when you leave the room, like just like in mediation, when you leave the room, that's it. And now it's up to the judgment of the law, and who the fuck knows what that is anymore. That shit's crazy out there. Yeah. They're changing it all the time, and they don't always follow it. Sometimes you have judiciaries who are just like, this is what I think. This is what we're going to do. Good luck appealing it. And you're like, okay, wow. Okay.
So I have a question for you. So what would you say, and you might not have an answer. So what would you say to folks who are just overwhelmed with just everything that's going on? Because there's so much that you can't even, and that's kind of that was the strategy. You flood the zone with so much bullshit that they can't fight it all. You can't debunk it. So what would you say to people who are overwhelmed and when they look around? You did say stay together, but any other advice?
Stay low, stay focused. I had this friend from college when I went to Baylor for a little bit. His name was Sean Garlinghouse, and he passed away young, but his nickname was Stay Low. And Stay Low was so good because he played lacrosse, so he would stay low. You know what I mean? Yeah. Miss the stick. Because the men's lacrosse, they'll whoop your ass. Mm-hmm. And so the thing about Shaun was that he was so chill and so focused on what his mission was. Mm-hmm. And I think we cannot solve like what's the alcohol, the prayer, help me to accept the things I cannot change. Right. Yep. And so we can't focus on all. We still have to, like, I still have to proactively show up at the ledge. Like Texas Ledge is happening right now. Who knows? Maybe by the time this comes out, we'll have legal cannabis in Texas, or we'll have a hemp ban and we'll have gone all the way backwards. Who the fuck knows? But we're like, I can only show up. I can only do my very best, keep showing up, keep focused on my mission because I got to put bread on my table. Try to mitigate peace in other areas of my life. And the sweating, the crazy, the circus, I think people forget he produced reality TV for a very long time. He was one of the first people who entered reality TV. And I'm saying it as because I was a broadcast journalist, but the military trained me. I've seen both sides. Huh?
Yep.
And this man was early entry reality TV around the same time that broadcast news had begun to become sports, because just from ESPN went over to CNN. CNN was struggling for a while. They did the sport. Then we started seeing programming like Around the Horn. Like, this is where, if you want to get into Around the Horn.
Well, now you're like what Pat McAfee is doing today. And like, you can really see a line of this, but like it also got opened up because there was no more mandatory sort of investigative, unbiased journalism that needed to be on mandatory to be on network TV after '96.
That was like what broke my heart the most, and I think we saw that with the death of print journalism, unfortunately.
I mean, that's what happened, and then of course technology made it go on crack because all of a sudden here comes, you know, social media, independent. Everybody's got a platform, you know, and there's no really regulation of that, which, you know, there's mixed feelings that I have
right
about
now.
that, but
not yet. I'm a little bit
well,
worried.
yeah, it might be coming down the pipe. You're not wrong.
Well, I'm
correct.
a little bit worried regardless.
Well, it already is, man. It's done. You're just not told, you know.
No, I'm not even just, obviously we're talking about surveillance, and we know that surveillance is, you know, that dates all the way back to the Patriot Act. I'm talking about new developments, like what we're seeing with Border Patrol going through people's phones and deciding what you can and can't say. That's unusual.
That is.
And then the students, whether or not we agree or disagree with what they've said, exercising First Amendment right. I never thought we'd question the First Amendment right to speech. And we aren't.
Well, we don't.
That is a question right now. So it's like,
well, it shouldn't be, and so you know, and that's the fact that it is you know, honestly just a stain on all of us. But
you know how they say possession is 9/10 of the law. Yeah, I feel like execution.
Perception is almost 9/10 of the law.
Perception is 9/10 of. I'd say 9/10. It's 10/10.
Perception is 9.
There's a lot you can do when you just. It's sort of the warped version of that famous Margaret Mead quote. Is it Margaret Mead? The like never underestimate a group of small citizens can do to move the universe, right, or whatever, or move the world to change. Yeah, never underestimate what a group can do when they're all a bunch of sociopaths who want all stuff for themselves.
Trying to break things.
Do a hell of a lot of damage that way too.
Yeah, we do have to.
That's the scary part.
Yeah.
Sorry, just people who are intent on destroying. Go ahead. Sorry. That's crazy.
No, I mean, I think that's what I grappled with when I was younger, because in my naivety, I wanted to be a combat photojournalist, recognizing like there is war, bad things happen, but I didn't think humans were inherently bad. Then you see what happens. And even still, you know that the story is complicated. Like when I was in Afghanistan, I met a Russian fighter pilot. I met an Afghan pilot who fought the Russians. And he told me, this guy was an old guy. He told me about his experience fighting the Russians, and then his experience fighting the Americans, and then his experience fighting with the Americans. And it gives you like this, like, wow, it's layered, it's complicated.
That's crazy. Oh my gosh.
I'm looking forward to when we can get back to the time where we can have complicated conversations again, because I feel like in the past 2 decades of trying to correct ourselves and overcorrect ourselves and then get to a policing of things, we went too far in how we were regulating ourselves socially. And we need to get back to a place where we can actually have nuance and conversation and questions, because that would allow us to protect things like the First Amendment. Because now we're having big questions.
And to bring it full circle, that's why things like mediation and arbitration and communication and clear contractually obligated, points and good, clear, what I like to call it when we're getting to know a prospect or feeling like we might move forward with a project or an opportunity is to get all the elephants in the room out there right away, or the gorillas in the corner, whatever metaphor you'd like. But just basically, let's air the dirty laundry out so that we can basically get it all done. Hey, this is what I heard from this person. Hey, I heard y'all did this. I saw that you did this. We didn't like this over here, but we are here because we still are open to it if you have the right answers to these questions that we have here, right? Great. And then you come to an agreement and off you go.
If you do something and you go to mediation, you have the protection of confidentiality. I'm not saying go out there and be an asshole. I'm saying if you do something and you want to own it, you can go to mediation. Your lawyer won't like this advice. No. So sometimes go to mediation without your attorney. You can do that. You can also have your attorney participate. When the 2 attorneys are the only ones talking the mediation, though, it's really, it's no good. That defeats the purpose.
It does.
I have a question for Shaun. Another. It's kind of a question.
I want to finish that one thing real quick, though.
Oh,
if you go and you say, own it, man. Extreme ownership, that whole Jocko thing. If you have done something in the past and you were a fucking dick and you screwed someone over and now you're in a room and you guys are trying to work out a deal or fix it or dissolve it, just own as much as you can, unless you're anticipating you're going to court, of course. But mediation is confidential. And if you really care about protecting that relationship for the future, or it actually means something to you and you're heartbroken, things have gone wrong and you did fuck up, practicing extreme ownership in that kind of way and apologizing is really tremendous. And it can be a turning point for conflict.
It's amazing how far, like literally million, billion, quadrillion dollar deals, like literally you just need to break the two stakeholders who are holding it up or causing the biggest problem. Just fucking talk.
So there's my
question. Not with a lawyer, and you've got to do it without a lawyer, maybe even without a mediator, to be honest with you. But ultimately, I know, but like you got to get that bread broken is the point.
Can I ask Shaun a quick question though? So that again, this leads to what you were just saying. So then, is there ever a time when you just say like, "Dude, you need therapy," or like something? Like, I mean, because it's like because all of the stuff that's going on now are men that need therapy. They should have had therapy. Donald, all of them need freaking therapy.
No, you're all too far gone. Here's some people that you can
turning the world down.
So, as the mediator, you're asking me as the mediator, do I ever say?
Yeah.
Of course, everybody thinks it, but you think that when you're a consultant too. How many who raise your hand if you worked with an executive who you thought could use some help? I think all of us can raise our hands.
Yeah, as a consultant, how many times do you actually turn into a coach?
As a consultant,
it's like almost every time in emerging markets or with people who are.
Here, let me tell you, let me warn any consultant who's out there wanting to be a therapist for their executives. The second that you give that guy the wrong answer, you're done. Do not become enmeshed. That's a therapist term.
Say that again, though. That's important.
Don't become enmeshed. The consultant.
Yeah, they start talking about the like personal whatever.
You can take your relationship issues everywhere. You can be codependent in business. You can enmesh people. You can enable. You can triangulate. A lot of people do that. I hate that. But as the mediator, what do? Sometimes you try to help them. Some mediators are actually former therapists who came to mediation because they also saw an issue. For mine, I was actually, before I was communication strategist in my transition from the military to communication strategy, I also had a plan B, and I'm known for executing plan A and plan B simultaneously. So I get to like live two lives sometimes at the same time. I got certified as an executive coach because in the military, they had already trained me up to be a first sergeant. So on the executive coaching level, you learn different ways of perception. One thing that you can try to do is approach things in a way where you frame different ways of seeing things, different perceptions of like levels of understanding a shared reality, where like you can get people to understand that if they're feeling like a level 1 energy is super negative, super draining, it's catabolic to your system. Like you can feel it even when you feel that energy, it costs you. And then how can you shift it up into like more of a, you got to get people to shift, like instead of going all the way to like a level 7, which is like nirvana, where you're like, yo man, we're all winning, this is the universe at odd. You got to get them to a level 3, which is like, hey, we're parked in the energy, and you're not angry or resentful or feeling in your victimhood right now. And sometimes you need to express that, and it does need to be acknowledged. But that's the thing about that turning point in mediation with that conflict stuff, is that often if you just own what you did, people are usually afraid of the consequence of owning it. I found more often than not, if you own it and you really own it, they'll align more with what your interests are too. Most people aren't just like, no, I'm here to fuck you over.
No, not most.
Interest, right?
It's difficult to get people to know, to recognize their fault in it, to own it, is because it's in
so
society.
difficult. It's a lot of self-awareness. Even like you'll even see like this is where you get those cases where like you see people who you would think like wouldn't have these issues, public speakers, gurus, meditation leaders, and then you find out that they
I mean,
have
not that you want to, I guess
we
ideally,
all
like you don't want to be wrong or screw up, obviously. However, it's inevitable that you will a little bit. I do find that, I tend to be pretty straightforward that way. If I've done something incorrect, or if I've rubbed somebody the wrong way, or if I've made a mistake, I'll make up for it. I'll talk to the person who is affected. I'll make sure we come to some sort of agreement. I'll make up for it in whatever way I possibly can to make sure that we're good.
You're self-mediating. And some people don't do that. And that's why you come to the table with the mediator and they can ask the right questions. So like mediation it's not. So here's how you distinguish mediation and arbitration is arbitration. You can, that mediator, whoever you brought in, can then make the judgment at the end of it. You can say, we don't want to go to court at all. We only want to arbitrate. In fact, a lot of people don't know it, but they have arbitration clauses in their contracts. It's like a default language. So check your contract. But you might have to arbitrate instead of suing. So arbitration, the arbitrator can render a judgment based on what they heard in the mediation. So maybe you'll be a little bit more mindful, but it's not, they're going to be neutral because you've probably vetted who you hired and you agree on the mediator. If you're only mediating, the thing is, the mediator is not there to be like, you were right and you were wrong and you need to say something. It's like mom and dad. It's everybody gets heard. Everybody gets heard. And then we're going to ask questions. And then if you can't hear each other, like if hearing the other person triggers you and you can't manage yourself, that's okay. I'm going to give you space for that. I'm going to put you in a breakout room. And you can tell me all you want. But just remember, this is a half day or a full day. And we got to stay on track.
And and time is money, everybody. So
right. And I like to help people move along because some people do like to stall mediations to fuck around.
Of course, it's a strategy that some people use.
It is. That is something where then, if things do not work out, the mediator can give not legal advice, but you can say, usually people who do that don't want to actually go to court.
No, of course.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you could probably talk about mediation and arbitration and communication and effective. Can you believe we've been talking for almost 50 minutes already? It went so quick. I knew it would with Shaun because Shaun, when I talk to you personally, it goes like this. But anyhow,
Gracie and I talk too much.
I'm saying we all talk too much. Before we go and head out, please make sure that all of our people can find you in all the places, including the Beard Bros Media Network, where you can watch the amazing Highly Informed every first Tuesday of the month, and all past episodes of season 2 and current season 3. Go ahead, Shaun. Where else can we find you?
You can find me there. You can find me at highlyinformed.com. It was a webpage. We're going to come out with material, but it is PBS. So that's on hold for now. And it's just going to the YouTube where all the seasons are, even the throwback ones. And then otherwise on IG, I don't really do a ton of social, but I do share when I'm doing legislative work or anything with Texas Cannabis Collective. So you can find me on IG at Shaun Salvaje, ShaunSalvaje. Otherwise, I don't have a Blue Sky. I don't have a Twitter. Even when I was a journalist, I was like, fuck no, I am not work in this stuff. I don't want to bring it home.
You are on LinkedIn. I'm
on LinkedIn. Yes. And you can find same name on LinkedIn. You can find me. And then hopefully soon we'll be launching the website for Parley. So I'm really excited about that. And that'll be an opportunity to get that communication service or the mediation arbitration services, like whatever you need to get the next deal done. Let's help you figure it out. I like to say you can call, before you call Saul, you can call Shaun.
Yeah.
And I think
yeah. And in fact, I would recommend you do that. Please contact Shaun, especially if you're in some situation where you're, not getting what you need out of the relationship, or people are not paying things on time, or there's been some disagreement with somebody that you still do seek to move forward with. These are all great examples of why you would potentially need a mediator and an arbitrator even before a lawyer, or instead. that one.
Or
And
get
so
your lawyer, file your suit, and then probably they're going to order you to mediation anyway.
that's a lot of times what happens. So anyhow,
Yeah.
Aaron, any last words before we take off today?
Yes, at some point I would like to. We barely touched on the photography part of it. I'm going to have a separate conversation with Shaun, because as someone who's had a camera in my hand since I was 4, I'm 52. I love storytelling through pictures, so we're going to have to talk about that. But
Ooh, yes.
we always end with a CTA, our call to action. And
so many this time.
I'm going to take one from what you said and own your shit. If it's your shit, like,
That's a good
don't
one.
pass it off if there's a problem. And actually, and we like to kind of expand it to the greater lessons and learning lessons in life. So with that, if you know that you are have fault in something, people out there, kind of, accept that, and maybe you need to extend an olive branch to someone, because just own it. If you did something wrong, own it. But own your own shit, and there we go. That's my call to action.
And the other CTA would probably be something along the lines of, make sure you're addressing all the elephants in the room, which goes along with own your shit, but own yours, but also encourage others to have a safe spot when you're basically talking and getting to know each other, to say, hey, we don't got any, we're all under NDA now. There ain't anybody around. Let's really talk about this in a really forthright, transparent as possible way, with each other's best interests in mind moving forward. You know what I mean? You really mean that shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Really, and so that goes back to owning your shit, but also it just means being willing to, like, I don't know if grace is the right word, but just be willing to have a lot of strategy, be willing to accept a lot of different ideas, and be willing to, really work as best as you can with the people that you're trying to partner with or do a deal with. Really be
and
open.
then if you have a thing where it's a legal concern and you still want to practice that radical honesty, get a fucking mediator, because then you have confidentiality, and then you can be really raw. You'll be surprised what comes out when you can be really honest, because nobody's looking. The files after mediation are all destroyed, and I am not called to testify. It goes against the rules, so I can't testify in court.
You couldn't. Yep. So again, there's a lot of benefit to that. You're not wrong.
Yeah. Protect yourself, my friends. Come on.
There's the final CTA, right?
Yeah.
It's have some grace, own your shit, but don't be stupid. Protect yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Don't give away the farm. Come on. Be reasonable. But also try to be a good steward.
Don't be paranoid. Be willing to be open, but
that's right.
Also create a safe place for both of you to be able to do that, because some people may feel that they can do it privately, and they don't understand that there might actually be a power dynamic that they're not aware of. Maybe the person with the power doesn't know they have it. So get a legal safe space, mediation that's confidential, and protect yourselves at the end of the day. But yes, own your shit. And if you can do it on the lowest level, then you should probably never need my services or need to go to a judge.
Yep.
Fascinating stuff, Shaun. Wow.
Thank you very much, Shaun, for joining us. We'll probably have to do this one again, I think. So, thank you so much for everything. We really appreciate you being on the show. I hope everybody out there has a fantastic day, and I don't know, take care of each other and have a good one. And hit Shaun up if you need
happy future 420.
Yeah, 420 will have happened. So I hope you had a great time.
What a nice weekend we all just had.
Yeah, wonderful. Yes, it was fantastic. Lots of good times, lots of good products. Enjoy. Take care, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.